Hello and welcome to the Story Engine podcast. Today on the show, we have Josh Elledge. Josh is the founder of Up My Influence, which is a unique agency that helps podcasters attract high quality clients in a way that is integrous, delightful, and easy. By having your ideal clients as guests on your podcast, making it easy for you to offer your products and services while being generous and thoughtful all the way through. We're going to learn about his process for how he attracts the perfect clients, how he filters them, and how he gets to lean into his go-giver philosophy and creative instincts through his podcast process. So without any further ado, let's hand it over to Josh. Josh Elledge, welcome to the Story Engine podcast.
Kyle, it's great to be here. I'm honored.
I am honored as well. As a podcasting super master, I've gotten the chance to be on your show and experience a lot of the brilliance that not only happens on your interviews, but before and after your interviews.
Right.
And I'm excited to showcase that with you today and help you tell a story for it. But to start things off properly, for those of us who don't know you yet, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you're showing up in the world today?
Yeah, well, if we're going background wise and what makes me tick, right out of high school, I joined the United States Navy and I became a Navy journalist, and that was actually a very transformative moment for someone who was just a kid, not really knowing what they wanted to do in life, because I was introduced to a guest speaker who came in, and his name was Staff Sergeant Adrian Cronauer. And that name may or may not be familiar, but he had a movie that was done in the 80s about his life because he was in the Vietnam War and he was a broadcast journalist and he was in the Air Force and ended up, really speaking his conscience. And he did so because he knew it was the right thing to do. And he also believed that you always have to be honest with audiences at all times. And if you are being dishonest, now, whether you're on stage as a speaker, if you're a YouTuber, if you're a podcaster, if you're a traditional journalist, if you're a politician or an actor, like any of that stuff, it doesn't matter. Audiences can tell when you're being mistruthful with them or if you're not being fully honest with them. And certainly if you're a marketer, you're not fooling anybody, right? Especially today, audiences have never been more skeptical. By the way, Staff Sergeant Adrian Cronauer was the movie. He was played by Robin Williams, and the movie is Good Morning Vietnam. And it wasn't like he was my Miyagi and I was Daniel's son, and he spent months teaching me how to wax cars or anything. But it was a pivotal couple of days, and I realized that when we agree to serve audiences, that there really is a sacred obligation, and it's quite frankly one that is quite critical. It's important, right? Because there's a lot of ideas out there. And if what the world doesn't necessarily need are more gurus, but what the world does really value are amazing teachers who are compassionate. That's what I've always tried to be, is just work with extreme empathy for audiences, so that I can find out, what their concerns might be, so that I can show up for them in that moment. So that led me to, I thought when I got out of the Navy, I studied family science in college thinking I was going to be a love doctor on the radio. I got distracted with internet development and started a string of internet companies, and most of them didn't do very well, but my seventh business venture, Savings Angel, did quite well, and it turned into a six-figure-a-month company, and I did that with zero paid ads. All I did was I served audiences, and I would go on radio and TV, and I started writing a syndicated newspaper column. All told, I've been in the media over 2,500 times for Savings Angel, and I just am the guy that can get you a deal, hookup, or upgrade on anything in life. That was my persona, and I would just give it all away, and I would not sell. I just treated audiences like they were smart and they were intelligent, and I allowed them to connect the dots. And as a result of that, Savings Angel did pretty well. And along the way, which brings me full circle to who I am today, that skill in working with the media and leveraging platform to serve audiences really helped me become who I wanted to be. So I just started teaching this pro bono in my local startup community, working with startups, veteran-owned businesses, minority-owned, women-owned businesses. I'm just trying to help out, serving on boards, a lot of pro bono mentoring, workshops, that sort of thing. And what happened when you do that is when you go out and start doing good things, oftentimes good things can happen to you because of who you start circulating with. Again, this is another pivotal chapter in what makes me who I am today. I unintentionally created a PR firm. I had no desire to do so, but because I was just out there circulating, doing good, that led to invitations. So I started Up My Influence. And we found out very quickly that, sure, there are a lot of PR firms that say, well, we'll put your name in lights and then all of your dreams will come true. I happen to believe that the other side of the coin is far more valuable and far more empowering and gets you into rooms that you would not normally get into. And what I'm speaking specifically of is, rather than the guesting side of the coin, which everybody's always clamoring to be a guest on platforms, my suggestion is maybe you should be on the other side, because if you do, supply and demand really works in your favor, and you can end up networking with your Dream 100 very easily because you're using platform to serve people, and that then gets you time and proximity together with amazing people that would never give you the time of day normally. So everyone right now in the business owner world and the founder and entrepreneurial world is, right now it's a race to the bottom with what we lovingly refer to as lead gen. I'm a big believer in a concept called the Go Giver by Bob Berg. And in the Go Giver, Bob Berg talks about leading in generosity and noble intent. If you'll do that, it will lead to good stuff. So all we've simply done, and we've done this over 250 times, I help established leaders start platform, network up, connect with their ideal partners, connect with influencers, investors, ideal clients. I make them 7 figures in sales, and they never have to sell again. They never have to do lead gen again. They just are leveraging platform to serve their industries. And by the way, they end up becoming household names within their industries as well. Again, there's a lot of intention and a lot of details I've kind of left out of the overall structure, but Kyle, that's kind of like professionally what I do. Now, if you want a different story about who Josh is personally, I could answer that question that way as well.
Of course. Well, there was a lot of weaving and angles in there, and I have a lot of follow-up questions just based on the gems that you've already laid down. And this means a lot to me as somebody. What really excited me about creating a podcast was the opportunity to have better conversations, and this was something that I tapped into from a relatively young age as well. When I was at the University of Utah, I was a member of an entrepreneurship group.
Mm.
And I had gotten some kind of clue, some kind of download that I realized that because I was a student, I could say, hey, I'm a student and I have a group of other students that want to hear from you. And I started interviewing different entrepreneurs who I wanted to hear from, who I
Yeah.
was interested in. And it opened up the door by one being a student and by two having a platform of other students. And as soon as I graduated, there was no more student advantage, student card. And I couldn't just say, hey, do you want to talk to me for an hour? To the people who I admired and wanted to speak to. No, it didn't work that way. And so having a podcast of my own, which is now coming on, I think, over 5 years, has
Wow.
been the way to start to build these relationships and have these conversations and advance things. And it brings me into my next topic, which was something that I feel very passionately about, and I'd love to go deeper on with you, is what is serving your audience with information. In my experience, I've seen a lot of people who are very smart and very talented, both on the host side and the guest side, get this point very, very wrong. And one of the biggest things, the biggest mistakes that I see, and this mistake, in fact, increases as you ascend through your levels of success, is that entrepreneurs and leaders constantly reference themselves for what they should teach and why. What's interesting to me? What
Mm,
has gotten me the best results? What do I want my audience to do? And even though we are being truthful and giving the best information, we're expecting the audience to take that information. And you said this and connect the dots. But I don't think that that's necessarily the best way to serve people. And in fact, finding ways to uh, meet the audience where they are, which as you deepen your expertise, you create a bigger and bigger gap between where you are and where your audience is and what's interesting to
truly.
them and what needs to help them. And so, in your experience as a host and as a leader of hosts and a speaker and creator, what are some of the ways that you help yourself and your clients truly create content that serves and is not just serving ourself or creating advancing our goals
Right.
but helping our people?
Well, look, this is kind of a soft skill, to be honest with you, because all we're talking about is empathy and an advocate personality. If you don't have that, I mean, that's going to be, I mean, that's more of a psychological journey that you're going to have to go on, and an internal journey and a personal development journey. I can't help you with that. Like it's either there or it's not. So, for example, like when we work with our clients, there are several filters. Like I am not trying to be, and to answer your question as well, I stay in a lane. Right. And so, I'm not going to teach all things to all people. But when it comes to business and sales development, okay, I very much act as a fractional chief revenue officer. Okay. Now, in addressing, I want to address a couple things, right? Because there's that empathy or that advocate personality, right? And so I think I get what you're saying, right? So, because you became rich, therefore you don't remember what it's like to be poor, or at least you're illustrating that that's a risk, right? And again, I would argue that it really is just kind of a function of who that person is. So, as the savings angel, I've been a consumer advocate for about 20 years now. So, when I create content, okay, I create content for Brenda. Brenda is going up and down the aisle at the grocery store, and she is forced with having to put things back in her cart because it doesn't fit her budget. She wants to get diapers for her kid. And she's so frustrated that her kid has not grown out of diapers yet. And yet she's forced to have to pay for these Huggies, and Huggies are the best, but they're so ridiculously expensive. And then she's balancing that versus the cheap store brand, or does she go back and use cloth diapers? I mean, these are hard decisions. So everything I write has to be written for Brenda. And so I do that with the persona in mind. Now, with Up My Influence, there's an audience that we serve. And that audience is generally not the earliest stage entrepreneur. I find I work best with people that have been through a little bit of the school of hard knocks, and then they get to a point internally where they recognize that relationship is everything. So in that case, I'm not serving the brand newest entrepreneur. Our audience, or who I typically work, is probably a few years into their entrepreneurial journey. They've already made a lot of dumb mistakes. They've probably been bamboozled by a few gurus out there, bought some stuff, didn't work out, probably invested in some snake oil that didn't work out, but they've stuck with it, right? Because they truly believe in who they are. And eventually they get to a point where they recognize that relationships are everything. It's not just about visibility and spray and pray, right? That's a fool's errand today. So it's about who you know, and it's about the big deals that get done behind the scenes, right? We like to talk about doing business in our whisper network. So I like to work with people that are already at that stage and are not interested in, like, if they want to collect butterflies, they're no longer at the stage professionally where they desire to run up and down the street with a big butterfly net trying to catch butterflies. They would much rather create the butterfly garden and allow people to come. So these are some of the tests that I look for in who I serve and who's in my audience. I'm always happy to be empathic and to give value to everyone, but not everyone's going to appreciate what I have to share because they're just not there yet. And so in that sense, I don't think that I've lost that empathy for who I serve. Different audiences for sure, particularly as we're talking about two different companies, two wildly different audiences. But here I am.
This brings me to my next question, which is around creating the butterfly garden, as you mentioned. Now, after having a podcast for this many years, I probably get at least 3 email outreaches a day from people who put my person on the show. And their one sheets, probably in so many words and so many ways, would belie somebody who would be possibly a good client or a good fit for me. But a lot of the times when I am accepting people from these cold outreach things, the quality is really quite low. I've had somebody
Of
come on.
those, right. So let me clarify. Are you saying that the quality of the guest is poor or the quality of the pitch is poor?
Both.
Okay.
Both.
So
It could be either. I haven't accepted many of the pitches anymore because the quality of the guests from these cold pitches have been so low that I've had somebody show up on this show. This was a long time ago, thankfully. They were like driving in their car and expecting me to interview them as they were driving to the
yeah,
grocery store or
that's
something
a
like
poor.
that.
They were poorly represented by their PR person. So I don't. I want to defend the PR industry for just a little bit, right? So
Yeah.
PR people they're doing the best they can with what their job is, and unfortunately, they're kind of tapping into a client base that is pinning a lot of hopes on that visibility, and they're hoping that that visibility is going to turn into business. So they're making it. The client is making an investment. I would argue that those who are making investments in so it's not so much about the fact that they're represented that is the indicator that that is a bad guest. I would argue that that probably is slightly more of an indicator that they are probably a better guest unless they were sold a bill of goods, right? In most PR people are pretty good, but honestly, it's not a high bar to call yourself a PR person. It's not any higher. It's about as high a bar as it is to call yourself a podcaster. Anyone can become a podcaster. Anyone can become a PR person. Anyone can try to make money doing anything. So what I would ask then, my follow-up question to you would be, is if someone's just coming solo at you, does that somehow make them better as a guest?
I am not very receptive. And this is actually where I want to go. And I think the more interesting part of this conversation can be is sometimes it depends on how they reach out. If they say, hey, I actually listened to an episode and gave a real thoughtful comment instead of,
which
hey,
AI
look
can
at
do.
me.
AI can say all of that for you now.
Yes,
So it
true.
means nothing, in my
Okay.
opinion. And by the way, I think what people are listening to are two people that have been really down in the weeds for many, many, many years. We're talking about something that I feel like we're talking about it. I'm talking about it academically, and I feel like you're talking about your real world experience of it.
Absolutely. And so, what I'm curious from you, and I think this is where your real brilliance comes in, is what's your process for filtering the right guests to make sure the right people are raising their hand and
Yeah.
showing up as perfect guests, which is where
Oh,
I've
oh,
wanted to go with this. And I think you have some real gems to share with us.
yeah, because that's what my influence does. So that's our whole company, right? And so if you're looking, so when I work with someone new, I say, listen, who's in your dream 100, right? And that concept basically, like, who are the 100 most valuable people that if you were to form a connection with them, they would probably be really good for business, right? Hopefully that's stacked with a bunch of potential clients and partners, investors, influencers, whatever. I say, great, let's take out the unicorns. Now, fill in the rest with, let's just make sure that these are people that are within a degree or two from where you are, right? So if in the business world, you're a 2, and you just got to be honest, like I was a 2. I hope I'm not a 2 anymore. I think I've, but I don't know.
Where
right?
would you put yourself now?
Oh, well, it depends on how you define that. If we're talking general business, I'm a 2. Like an overall,
Tony Robbins is 10.
Yes, your titans of industry. Oh, yeah. I'm a 2. Okay. But now, if you talk about now, as we further define that down in podcasting, I'm probably getting up there. But I got to tell you that doing exactly what I do, there's nobody in the world that is my peer. Nobody in the world can do what I do like I do it, right? So in that sense, I'm unmatched. Right. And that's a very small group, or it's a very particular set of skills, right, that I've acquired over a long period of time. Right. But when it comes to leveraging platform and podcasts in particular to facilitate introductions that lead to huge business deals and opportunities, yeah, I'm one of the best in the world. And I can say that because I've just been doing it long enough. I have enough evidence to support that. And I've just not met anyone that can put the kind of numbers on the board that I can. Now, there are other ways of doing it, right? And in that sense, I'm probably a nobody in that world. So what was your original question? I think I took a dog treat and ran off with it.
That's a good thing. So I would love to get like a couple of tips.
Tips for filtering. Oh God. Yeah, here we go. Okay. This is okay. Listen, because here's the thing. So Bob Burg is the author. He and John David Mann are the authors of the book, The Go-Giver, right? So I've done a couple of things with Bob Burg, and I have to tell you my experience. So Bob always lead with noble intent, always lead with generosity, and that's just how he does business. That said, you cannot spend your time. You can't give everything to everyone. Otherwise, that's not a business, right? And so, it's just like spending all your time. Like you wouldn't want to spend weeks and weeks and weeks with someone who's just clearly doesn't have the budget to work with you, clearly they're just not serious about it, right? So we have to be very, very careful about who we invest into relationships with. And it's not that one person is better than another. It's just, there are certain people that I can provide more value. If someone has budget to work with, I can provide them a ton of value because my work just requires investment. I got a team. I have a lot of expenses to do. What I do is just, it takes investment. So that said, I have to be very thoughtful about how I get the right people in the room. So from a general sales perspective, we know about customer avatars and personas, right? We nerd out on personas. You have to, right? So when my client is coming in and they're giving me their dream 100, I'm really drilling down on that. Like, what makes an ideal client for you? And demographics easy, right? Okay, they need to have this kind of budget. They need to have this many employees. Company needs to be doing this kind of volume in sales. They need to be in this industry. They need to be this geography. The leader needs to be this or that or whatever, right? Those are just demographic fits. That's easy, right? Because my podcast and the 250 podcasts that we've launched, we just simply set demographic filters in the application. Hey, if you want to be a guest on this podcast, listen, mine's pretty easy. Right? In my podcast, you have to be doing 6 figures. You need to be in B2B. You need to be thoughtful in your approach to how you do business. You need to be relationship oriented. And those are the big ones, right? And, you need to offer something like your time, our guest's time has to be valuable. So the way that I say is like, listen, if someone were to engage you, you have offerings that exceed they're 5 figures or more to engage you. So from an editorial standpoint, I love that because that usually means that person probably has some domain expertise that's pretty valuable. That's probably going to make them a great guest on the show, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of what I'm doing here, we like to describe as just editorial justification, right? I can't interview everyone on the planet, nor can I do business with everyone on the planet. So I'm just going to I'm not going to try to be the be all end all podcast interviewing every Joe on the street. Okay. I have a very, very specific type of guest that I'm looking for. And that all goes into the application. But see, this is the easy part. The part that you really need to get well done. And we have this with the Patent and Trademark Office, along with a couple of other processes that we've developed over the years, is values alignment and psychographic fit. So a simple way to explain generally what we're doing is the concept of the podcast, the branding, everything is designed very intentionally so that it appeals to certain types of people that share the values of what our clients' ideal customers would need to have before they engage, if that makes sense. So my podcast is called The Thoughtful Entrepreneur. You can decide, it's a Rorschach test. You can decide what, like just like you're talking about, it's a little bit of a Rorschach test. It's intentionally vague. I would probably, if I were to start over again, I'd probably pick something a little bit different, but it is what it is. So in that sense, I define what that means, right? That you're very relationship oriented, you're focused on serving audiences, and very in big, bold letters, I'm like, I cannot be more emphatic about this, on my podcast. No broy marketers, period. Right?
Could you define bro
why is that
for us?
What's that?
Would you quickly define bro marketing for us? I hear
Yeah, they're the hustle bros. They're the ones that are taking pictures in front of a sports car, and you know exactly what I'm. They're kind of the Glenn Ross. Trying to win the set of steak knives or the Cadillac Eldorado. They treat people like leads. They use that kind of language. Oh, you're gonna slam out some leads for me? It's just icky. Mm-hmm. It's awful. Like if they started selling at you, you would probably want to take a step back unless you are totally in that level of energy. So people who are not in that energy know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the high pressure salesperson. It's the person that when you're going to a mixer, they just can't shut up about trying to sell you their business. They're the me monsters out there trying to slap business cards in everyone's hand. Okay, the rest of us are repelled by that. We don't want to be around that. Right?
We're so repelled by it that we're traumatized and err in the absolute other direction because we've experienced it and we don't want to be like that.
Yeah. And listen, I'm describing this. I'm using some pretty strong language to describe this. I don't want anyone to feel bad, right? It's just not my tribe. I'm not good at working in that environment. In fact, I'm terrible at it. Like I tried hanging out in the ClickFunnels world for just a little bit back in the day. And I'm like, these are just not my people. Like I appreciate where they're at. Like I went to the 10X conference. What's his name? Grant Cardone. And listen, his people love him, blah, blah, blah. That's great. It's just not my people. And they seem to be doing well. And, the people at the top seem to be making money there. So God bless them for that. It's just not my way of doing business. And so a lot of folks that I work with need to be pretty relationship oriented. They're willing to slow down and play the long game, plant a lot of seeds because they know that that's how the big deals get done. And those people, the kind of people we work with, they will say things like most of their best business comes through word of mouth. Okay. That usually is a really good indicator that that's a good fit for someone like me. So I presuppose all of that in the filter in the podcast. So everything from the application to the branding to everything in the experience, what I'm saying in my video, I'm intentionally putting negative filters. Like if you're watching the video of me right now, you'll see some things in my background that are very intentional, that if you have a problem with that, that's probably an indication that's probably not going to be a good fit for us to work together. And I'm cool with that. So I set positive and negative filters very intentionally because I have limited amount of time. I don't want to work 80 hours a week. I don't even want to work 40 hours a week. I want to work about 20, 30 hours a week. And I want to be the most crazy valuable I could possibly be in 20, 30 hours. So I can spend the rest of my time tending to my herb garden or walking my dog or, playing Mario Party with my wife. I like doing fun stuff.
So, for the sake of testing this deep knowledge of your audience and being direct in the time, can you tell us about the three biggest pain points that your ideal clients
Yes.
have that you solve?
Yeah, absolutely. So number one is going to, and this is, I think this is by far the biggest complaint that everybody has. So number one is going to be inconsistency on sales, right? You have good months because most of our clients are doing well in business, but they have good months and then they have bad months. And the bad months are maddening because, and this kind of gets into number two, at their stage in business. And as long as they have been doing what they're doing, in the back of their mind, they're thinking something like, at this stage of my life, I didn't think I was still going to be having to deal with these kind of problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, number one is inconsistency. Number two is a little bit more of a stage of life type of thing, right? That they're like, listen, I'm good enough now. I shouldn't be having these kind of problems with ups and downs, right? And so the problem with number one and number two is that we tend to internalize this. We look at our current cash flow and say, it must mean that I'm not good at what I do, or the market is no good, or there's something wrong with me or my offer. No, probably not. We've all seen pretty crappy business owners and pretty crappy products out there make lots of money.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I'm just going to be very blunt with you in terms of like, I've got my CRO hat on right now. Generally, if your offer has sold before, your offer is probably good. Okay. If people have bought from you before, you're probably all right. Right. It's not the fault of the product. It's probably not your fault. You just simply need more at bats. You just need to be talking with more people, because if you can increase the rate of new sales conversations, right? And if you were to increase that by 5, chances are really good you are going to increase your new revenue by 500%. So, how do we solve this problem? Well, this gets
Well,
into number
not
3.
solving yet. Yeah, just
Yeah,
problem.
I understand that the third problem is they've tried a bunch of stuff and a lot of it feels incongruous with who did I say the right word? It's
That's
out
good.
of it's out of integrity with who they are. So the reason that most of us get into business is because we're very passionate about a certain things. I mean, some of us get into business because we just want to make a bunch of money or whatever. But most people are passionate about what they do. Like they just, we see this in the E-Myth, right? And so they spend all of their time, becoming this or that, right? And then they realize that businesses require clients and customers. And that then requires a whole different skill set that chances are has nothing to do with your primary skill. So then, and this is kind of further illustrating problem number 3, we say, okay, well, cool. How do I get new business? Oh my God, I got to do lead gen? Ew, I hate that. I'm supposed to slam people's DMs on LinkedIn. I'm supposed to be sending cold email. I'm supposed to be doing TikTok dances on to drum up business. That just feels beneath me. And quite frankly, I wouldn't want to do business with someone who that's how they approach me. So they're really frustrated. So they'll try things like SEO and webinars and all this other stuff. And it either works or it's not working real well. It's inconsistent. Certainly, like most inbound stuff is not very consistent at all. It's really frustrating that a lot of the advice that especially the gurus and the bros will share is just stuff that just doesn't feel very good, right?
Perfect.
Like I didn't get to this stage of my life and get to my level of expertise professionally to turn into a spammer or to even outsource to some spammers to try to drum up some business for me. That just feels out of integrity for me.
This
So,
brings me to my next question. This is a
yeah.
really good statement that you just said here. When in your life, when was a specific experience and moment where you had that thought run through your head? As close to a specific time and place as possible.
So you're
Or when
talking about which one?
When did you feel these things? I should not have to be dealing with this at this level
I think we
for
all
me.
do. Yeah,
I know.
and very specifically for me, like I'm pretty calm and cool now because my bills are paid, right? So I'm not really worried about that. And quite frankly, I don't need to be $100 million a year company. I just don't like that's not a priority for me. Like I want to make a big impact in the world. So it's been a little while on the cash flow side of it that I've been frustrated. But I'll tell you, it was about 5 years ago
Yeah, that's what I'm
when
talking about.
yeah. Okay. So let me get there. I'm an external processor. Okay. So about 5 years, 5.5 years ago. So most of my business, like when I was, savings angel, and I kind of, got involved in different communities, just kind of helping out or whatever. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to make a go at this, I probably should get business on a regular basis because all my best clients were just coming when I just kind of bump into people at events. And they're really good people to work with. All right. But then it was like, well, I probably should, in between events, I should probably get clients as well. And so that's where, I kind of looked into some of those marketing worlds, that are out there, those cultures that are out there. And that to me, I'm like, I left one of those events. I'm like, there's no way in the world. Like, I'm not going to do that. There's got to be something else. And so I was always a big believer in the leading with generosity thing. Certainly Savings Angel had done pretty well, but it was a completely different audience. And, certainly I'm happy to serve audiences in order to get there. But it was that frustration with not wanting to do that icky stuff and not wanting to be a spammer. I said, listen, I don't care if even if I had to struggle financially, I'm not going to dishonor my integrity. Right. I'm going to only do business in a way that I would want to do business with. And so that just ultimately led to, out of necessity, well, what can I be generous with today? Well, let's see, I can serve audiences with my podcast. And I've been doing that since 2007 as taking my radio segments with Savings Angel and converting them to MP3, hand coding my own RSS feed, uploading it to my own janky server. I mean, it's just, all that stuff. I'd done that. So I thought, well, wait a minute. When I'm podcasting, I end up meeting really cool people. And this was, again, 5.5 years ago, 6 years ago that I launched the Thoughtful Entrepreneur. And I just said, why don't I just increase the number of it? I was doing in it a weekly interview. Why don't I do 2 interviews or 3 interviews a week? Why not make it a daily show eventually? And
Perfect.
lo and behold,
We're getting into the solution, and I still want to hear more about the problem. I want to hear about a specific day. You mentioned leaving an event where you're like, I'm not going to do this. Or maybe there was
yeah.
a specific time. We don't have to name a name, but I want a Tuesday afternoon, and you're sitting at your desk and you just finished your go giver attitude and philosophy, and it totally fell flat with this person, and you're feeling like I shouldn't have to be dealing with this right now. Is there a specific moment
No,
in time
because
for you?
as I was networking in the wrong rooms, I felt it pretty quickly. Like I
Yeah.
said, I already had a company that was doing okay, so like I wasn't really struggling. I really and I recognize that I'm coming and I'm speaking from a position of luxury. Now, let me tell you a different story let me back up the truck because I think I know what you're asking for. Okay,
Hmm.
so but it's not so much about the kind of the let me tell you this story because I think this is relevant, right? So when I started Savings Angel, I did need money. Like in fact, during the winter of 2007, we were living in West Michigan, and I had a contract position that was really getting unstable. My income was unstable with that, and so I kind of just started this Savings Angel thing, and it was a SaaS based product. It's $20 a month, and it would help you cut your grocery bill in half. And I thought it was right. This is a brilliant idea. I love it. And so I think it's going to be successful. And so I bet it all. I sold the home. We're in a small rental, and just trying to see if I can make a go of it. And I just did not have enough money. And there was one week in particular. It was March of 2007, and we went to my heating bill, I was getting behind on. Like I was getting behind on all my utilities, all my bills. Right now, thankfully, I'd figured out how to cut my grocery bill in half. So I was able to feed my family of 4 and 5. Family of 5 for like $300 a month, and I'm like, wow, this is cool. So anyway, but there was I had reached out to a local radio station, and I said, listen, I have a little bit of a background in radio. Like I did that, and I was in the Navy, I was in radio. Listen, I would love to advertise on your station, I'm not in budget. I don't have budget for that, right? But what I would love to do is I would love to be of service, and I would love to help your audience save money at the grocery store. And so I would love to do a quick segment, and I'll show them how they can get Cheerios for 50 cents a box this week. I can tell you exactly how to do it right now. Exactly, the steps and the website. You print out the coupon and take it to this store. It's on sale or whatever. And so they said, okay, well, we'll have you on the morning show. We'll have you come in. And it was just a small town radio station. So my heating bill was due that Friday. And this was a Tuesday morning. Then I went in to JQ99. And so when I went in, I didn't have back then, I didn't have like a smartphone where I could like pull up my stats at any given time. I couldn't get notifications. Like I had no idea. I'm just going in blind. And so I do my radio segment, not very good. I mean, I was, really amateur hour. I stayed up all night. I didn't even sleep the night before because I was just rehearsing and just trying to plan this to hopefully have it go well. But it went okay. Right. And so I recorded it, drove home. It was about a 15-minute drive back home. And I'm like, well, I wonder how things went. And then I go back and my wife didn't even know how to like log into a computer. I mean, this is old school times, right? I had this old janky membership system. It was just held together by a bunch of duct tape and baling wire, I think, as they say, right? So I log in, and that morning, so I had earned, so a bunch of people went to the website and signed up based on that one radio segment that I did, enough so that I had earned enough money to pay my utility bill, my heating bill that was due that Friday. And so, the next day, and I earned a little bit more, and I'm like, my God, again, there was probably some other things I could have done. Like I could have put signs on telephone poles or bought some ads or whatever, but I didn't have any money for ads. Like I just literally had nothing else. Necessity was the mother of invention. So I had to get crafty, and I didn't have money, but I had my goodwill. And I had my willingness to work really, really hard to make the host look good, to make the producer look great, the person who connected us, I want to make them look good. So I want to try and make everyone look good, really just give as much value as I can to that audience, and it paid off for me. How's that?
It's a start.
Okay, all right, good. And by the way, I've told this story in a much more eloquent way. Like if I've got some prep for it, but just because I know you're the story guy.
Yeah.
So that's probably a C- version of that story. Excuse me.
That's okay.
I can do it and bring out the waterworks if you want to.
No, not yet, at least. So I think this is a good start at an origin story, but I feel like there's something more further along that more closely reflects. I am looking for a moment that emotionally reflects the inconsistency on scales, the I should not be having these ups and downs, but incongruous with who they are. I think somewhere around the 2014 time is when I sense you have a moment for this that could really work. I have these skills and I have this big heart, and I don't want to be a bro marketer, and I just feel like that's the only option. But I think this specific moment of the winter of 2007 is good. Do you have another moment kind of like that a little bit later on?
Well, so I experience this all the time with our own clients, right? I've got one guy who, when I just, I'll never forget. I don't want to name his name, but, he was just in tears. He goes, Josh, listen, I'm supposed to I'm going to be hitting 65 in about 7 years. I don't have any retirement. Mm-hmm. I don't have anything saved. Right now, I'm just paying my bills barely, right? And I'm good at what I do. I've had some moments in my life where I have just been absolutely celebrated on stage and like truly been it, right? So my story is really their story, right? Because that's where that empathy comes from that we talked about. If I don't take action and I don't help people, like we'll call him Roger. That's not his name, right? But if I don't take action, Roger goes out of business. Roger's forced to take a crappy job just so he can keep his lights on, right?
Hmm.
And so all of his hopes and dreams, everything that he'd been building for 20 years, just because of a lack of introductions, and he refuses to do something that violates his integrity. That's my people. That's why
Yeah.
I do what I do. And there are consequences to me not doing that job, right? Just like there's consequences for Brenda of me not helping her be able to get Huggies diapers for 67% off, right?
Yeah.
So that's what drives me. I have to do this. There's a moral obligation to me doing this work, because if I don't, people get hurt.
Absolutely. Beautiful. And so now let's go to a different moment. I would love to hear about a specific moment where you experienced the victory that you provide, that you reflect, not your
Mm.
clients, but to you, where I have great people coming in. I can
Mm-hmm.
be authentic and congruent in what I do, and I have consistent revenue coming in. And maybe it was a vacation that you got to take because of this, and maybe some of your children reflected something great to you, and you finally
Yeah.
felt this level of success. And I'm sure you have it all of the time, and
Yeah.
I want to pick one moment.
Yeah, and again, it's not going to be the monetary stuff for me, because again, I'm just kind of a mission oriented person. As long as I have my bills paid, like I'm okay, right? So like the money stuff, to me, money is just really just it's just an energy. It's just an expression of other great work that's been done in most cases. But I will tell you this, in terms of solving for the problem. Um, Listen, I would start with this quote, and I'm going to get to this story here and this point. Robert Stevens, the founder of Geek Squad, famously said that advertising, and I would add lead gen, is the tax you pay for being unremarkable. If you're having to hustle to go drum up business, that's not a normal thing. That's not a good thing, right? It just means that you're not yet at the level that you should be if you're truly remarkable. Remarkable people have opportunities just fall in their lap because of who they are and what they've done. Okay. Now we're all in that journey. And for most of us, it takes a little while to get to what we like to call the stage of remarkable. Right. And so for me, the biggest challenge that I am focused on with our clients is I need to solve the problem of consistency and quality of introductions. Because if you have enough people coming through the front door, like the other stuff you can fix in real time. You can repair the plane as it's flying. As long as you got warm bodies coming through the front door, you're probably going to be okay. Right. And so I have to solve that problem, because again, that's the number one concern that all small business have, is just it's cash flow inconsistencies and just don't have enough sales. Right. That is a solvable problem. And so it just requires us to be remarkable. So here's what I did. So the Thoughtful Entrepreneur, about 6 years ago, I just increased the rate of people. Now it was an investment. I was having to do a lot of podcast editing myself, because, even though I didn't really have like a gracious exit from Savings Angel, it really, when couponing fell out of favor, Savings Angel just kind of fizzled mostly.
Hmm.
And so it wasn't like I had, thankfully had some savings and stuff, but generally not. So like I had to, I had to stay lean, very lean in the beginning of Up My Influence. So I was doing a lot of the work myself. So I would just constantly, investing all this time and effort into recording these interviews with people. I have to do all my own editing. There were really didn't have VAs and the tools that we have, but today, even just
Hmm.
6 years ago, like it was just more challenging, certainly for the quality that I wanted to do. So anyway, so I'm investing all this time and effort and resources into increasing the rate of podcast that I'm doing. And the more episodes I produced, the more guests would start to show up. right? And so I'm like, well, this is great. Again, it's an investment with each of these people that I'm investing into the relationship. And I did get my nose bloodied quite a bit in the beginning. I was not very good at what I did. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I've since, I've wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars in my company. I've wasted years and months of just dumb tests and experiments that didn't pan out, right? But when I got to the point, and this was November of I guess it would just over 5 years ago. So we'll do the math on that. November 19, I guess.
19.
November 19. We had like over 60 like really just awesome applications come in of people that wanted to be guests on the podcast. And it was at that point that by then, I had Elisa on my team who's now my COO. And I said, stop talking about the podcast. We're not accepting guests. Like I have way more guests. I would at 60 a month, even at 60, it was more. It was like 64 in 1 month. And these were the people that passed the application. Like these are all really good people. I'm like, this is the stage of remarkable. Now, I'm leading in generosity. I'm going to be investing into these relationships, but I'm going to play the long game with all these folks and just trust that because I'd been doing this long enough. In fact, I knew that this was going to work out well because I had one client. We were just doing like more traditional media back in the time, like a lot of podcast placements. And I had one client and I said, listen, let me tell you what we did with our podcast. And I think that this might be a really great deal. So just increase the rate of your service and just serve your industry much, 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 much harder. And I said, but look at what's happening right here. And she goes, oh my gosh, do that for me. And I said, okay. And so Sonia was going to a conference and I said, listen, don't bother with hitting up the people that are attending there. Instead, what I want you to do is I want you to go from, because her clients were the people that were investing to be at that conference. And so I said, what you should do is go from booth to booth to booth to booth and say, oh my gosh, that sounds really cool. I would love to feature you as a guest on my podcast. And my suspicion is that they're probably going to be pretty interested in that. And sure enough, she ended up doing like 30 some interviews at live on site at that event. And she was selling a $25,000 mastermind. It was a 12-month mastermind. So, it was definitely, she had to do a lot of work in there. But she sold out of the 30 some people that she interviewed, 7 of them, she already had one, 7 of them agreed to join her mastermind. And so she made $175,000 in sales in about 2.5 days time. And I thought, wow, this is really powerful. Generosity really does work. So anyway,
Perfect.
there's kind of a mishmash of stories in there.
Sounds good. Would you
See,
like
I
to
have,
hear
I
your
have a
story
ton of
now?
client stories by now just because I've been doing this long enough. And their stories, quite frankly, are better than mine. So I'll keep telling their stories.
Fair enough. Would you like to hear your story anyway?
Bring it on.
Absolutely. After many years in business and many years of ups and downs and living in a place of necessity, I had started up a new podcast. I kept reaching out to more and more people and was tired of the inconsistency in clients. I wanted to be a go giver and share my generosity and my brilliance. But there were many times and many late nights of editing my show, and that my gifts and my brilliance just weren't quite received in the right way. And I thought there had to be a better way for all of the time that I was spending. There had to be a better way of attracting. And I needed this to work. I had done this before. I had had a lot of experience. I had built a company around savings that had come and had gone, but it wasn't delivering what I needed. And now it was time to have results. I didn't have money for ads. I didn't have things to get crafty, but I had goodwill. I needed something unique that could attract the right, perfect people who were ready for my gifts and could take action on so much more than just the beginning of this conversation. I needed people who were valuable for the relationships that I could create. And I needed a way to do this that was authentic and fun and worthwhile for me, especially during the times where I was creating so many of these podcasts and things on my own. Now, friends, this took many years and a lot of costly and painful mistakes. But over the years of building up my own podcast, The Thoughtful Entrepreneur, I started to create the process which would become Up My Influence. And I can remember a specific time in November of 2019 and hearing from one of my team members, looking at a list of over 60 applicants, good, great people who were perfect for me to collaborate and create with, who valued what I was doing and I could make an impact with, much beyond the conversation that we have on our podcast. And I had to go to my team and say, we have to stop talking about the podcast. This is going too good. And at the very same time, I remember hearing from somebody who I started sharing this strategy with, who went to an event and went from booth to booth to booth, creating connections, offering and giving value, and reaching out to me and said, I sold 7 people in a few days for a 25K mastermind. And it was in that moment that I realized that this process that I had gone through could help so many more people other than myself. And that's exactly what I do and why I do what I do at Up My Influence. And that's what I'm going to teach you how we do it today.
Well, I like the way you tell that story better than me. I like that, Kyle. You're gifted at this. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a pleasure discovering your process and seeing the many different elements that go into creating these results. Do you have any closing thoughts for us today, and where can we go to learn more about you?
Well, yeah, and that simply is, just increasing your rate of generosity. It will feel scary at first. It will feel, it might feel the opposite of what you should be doing, right? You should be selling more because that's what the bros tell you to do. I'm here to tell you that where you plant your seeds is not necessarily where you're going to reap your harvest. However, when you continue to show up consistently and you show your industry that you are a giver, you will get to a point where you will not be able to outgive what comes back in return. I've seen this happen hundreds of times, right? If your heart is in the right place, and you just really want to do what you love, and someone told you that you have to do all of this other yucky business sales stuff in order to do what you really want, it's a lie. You don't have to. You can always stay in integrity. You can lead in generosity. Now, again, you need to be in the right rooms with the right people. So you might have to really be honest about what you can give. Okay. And it's probably going to be something beyond just webinars and white papers and free audits, because that's what everybody does. You're going to have to be even more generous and give away what other people are not willing to give away so that you could earn the kinds of relationships that they will never earn. But I just want to remind you that scarcity is the language of the amateur, and generosity is the language that leaders use to identify one another. This is what happens after 2,200 interviews on the podcast. And we talk quietly when the microphones are off. And those conversations, that's where all of the magic happens. It's when no one's watching. No one's got any big motives. Like, my goal when I connect with someone is never to sell them. It's to provide them the greatest value that I possibly can at the time. If I do have one goal, maybe it would be to evoke in my friend, this concept of, oh, good, I now have a friend who does what Josh does. Like, that's valuable for me. And if I can be that resource for them, then that's up to them if they're in market or not. They get to make that decision, not me. But for me to assume that it's somehow my job to convince them because that's what good salespeople do, I think is a lie. And it's a lie that you've been told for far too long. Just be awesome and the right people will do business with you. You don't need to push it. You don't even need to worry about it. And those people who recognize and have seen your generosity proven time and time again will work to try to do business with you. We all want to do business with our friends. So stay the course. Go read The Go Giver by Bob Berg. And then, yeah, come Google me. My name is Josh Elledge. It's Elledge. Just look me up on Google. You'll see my history. You'll see everything that I've been talking about on this show. It's all backed up by data and stories and lots of media. You'll find me all over YouTube. But my main website, and I would say, listen, if you've resonated with what I'm talking about and you've done okay in business, like, listen, it would be my honor to share your story. Kyle, I had you as a guest on my podcast already, but these are the stories that deserve to be told. Like, we deserve to celebrate those leaders that lead in generosity. It's those people, not the person that has the biggest Facebook ads budget, that deserves to have the loudest voice in the room. So if that's you, I would be honored if you would consider being my guest on The Thoughtful Entrepreneur. So again, just go to my website. It's www.upmyinfluence.com. Click around, go spy on me. I'll never know that you were there. But if you want to be a guest on the podcast, then just click on podcast, and it would be my honor to feature you. So Kyle, thank you so much for this great conversation, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Josh Elledge, thank you so much for joining us on the Story Engine podcast.